do it now. So as I said earlier in the stream, like I started streaming because of gaming. Call of Duty Warzone was one of the first games that I actually streamed, but Blackout from BO4, that was really the first game that I streamed. It was the first introduction to esports and streaming and Twitch and all of that was Blackout 4. And I feel like it was for so many others as well because it fostered a community in Call of Duty that was declining. And then it seemed like this older group of people who were coming back to COD had Blackout. And is COD dying? It seems like it's going through the cycle again, but Blackout and Warzone brought it back from the dead, and it seems like it's dying again.
Heard of the Big Crunch theory?
I hope not. I love
COD. You probably heard about the Big Bang, right? At the very beginning of time, there was an unfathomably dense amount of stuff at a singular point that rapidly expanded outwards.
Dude, the editing in this video for a Call of Duty video? What are we watching? Interstellar?
Crunch is the complete opposite of that. The Big Crunch is a theory on how the universe might end.
Shout out to Repulse. I actually have an autograph of this dude on a controller.
Actually, the weight and pull of everything that's been created can no longer sustain outward growth, and instead begins to lose its battle with gravity. It starts slowly, but then eventually the collapse rapidly increases until there is a big crunch.
He's an honest to God, this guy made
At the time of recording this, Call of Duty is...
This guy, super good human being in person. I can vouch for it. Met him in person, dabbed him up, gave him the whole thing, you know, genuinely good guy. Had all like it was early in like for COD Champs 2023, early in the morning. He's trying to get ready for the day. Me and my buddy Logie stopped by to say hi to him, and he literally gave us the time and day, all the questions, no rush, just having a good time, vibing out. Genuinely good dude.
Edging closer.
Good gamer, loves Call of Duty. That's why we're watching this.
And closer to a make it or break it moment. It continues to try and do more and more, pushing it closer and closer to collapsing on itself. But it wasn't always that way. On March 10th, 2020, Call of Duty released its first Warzone map ever, Verdansk. It was simple, fun, and launched at the perfect time. So today I want to talk to you guys about what made Warzone 1 feel so special, how the game has progressed to where it is now, and why we feel the way we do about it. And you have to understand that Call of Duty was in a rough spot before Warzone came out. Just like anything, the gaming world experiences ups and downs, collapses and falls. Every few years, there's a new game that's a juggernaut and takes over the gaming space. If you want to go way back, you could say games like...
We're like a year or two out from that. There has to be some new game that takes over the world by storm, because we've had Fortnite, we've had PUBG, we've had Warzone. We need a new game that takes over the world.
Tetris or Mario for the original
Valorant,
NES.
We've had
Those were
like,
the OG titans.
We're missing. We
and
need
if you
another
jump forward
one.
a little bit, games like Halo and Call of Duty took over the online gaming space. Obviously, there's other great games in between, but just like anything else, the popularity quickly died. And in 2017, a new juggernaut of gaming launched. Fortnite.
Oh!
Oh my God, old school Cypher.
Let's go, baby!
Fortnite was not the first game to do a battle royale, but I believe it was the first game to make it accessible to any player of any skill. And let me tell you, it exploded. At the time of recording this...
It also, whatever you really thought about or wanted to do in Fortnite, it allowed you to do it. There wasn't really anything in there that was like preventative or felt weird or off. Everything just felt very good with the game.
Video, Fortnite still has millions and millions of players playing it. That is 8 years later than its original launch. As Call of Duty's popularity was fading, they saw Fortnite's success and decided for them to do a battle royale of their own. But before we get into why Warzone 1 was so successful, let's talk about why Fortnite succeeded the way it did. And more specifically, why battle royale was so popular. The premise of battle royale is simple. Just like the Hunger Games, everybody spawns in as a solo and you have to survive to be the last man standing. There can only be one winner. And unlike free-for-all, the thing that makes battle royale exciting is it's in a massive map.
Also, their events were always good. This is true. The Fortnite events, especially with how immersive they were, where it's like everyone had to be on the game at the same time and everybody was witnessing these live events happen. I think people... Like, Fortnite spoiled everybody because that was the peak. That was the level of expectation for live service games, and literally no other game has even come close. None.
Map. There's close to 100 players every single game battling out to see who is the one that can come out alive. For its time, this was pretty revolutionary. The only thing even close to that in online gaming was MMOs, or games like Battlefield that let you fight in large team numbers.
That's not true. We had Twisted Metal. We had Twisted Metal back in the day.
And most importantly, in Battle Royale, you only get one life. Each Battle Royale game has its own mechanics that add a twist, like being able to build walls or having different health mechanics. But at its core, a Battle Royale is a lot of players fighting to be the last one standing. This creates a lot of high-pressure situations, forces you to evolve your strategies as the game goes on, and what makes a Battle Royale really special are the stories that you create throughout the game. Because the maps are so big, because the scale is so grand, there are no single games that are exactly the same. And that creates millions of unique situations and stories, not to mention unique playstyles. Each game has its own adventure.
Shout out to Aiden. Look at young Aiden. He's lost so much weight. He's another guy who I got to meet, another upstanding human being. Big fan of this kid.
And Call of Duty wanted to tap into that. But as some of you might not remember, their first attempt at a Battle Royale was not as successful.
Say it.
Warzone was not its first BR, it was Blackout. There was a lot of things that I think Blackout did wrong, but there was...
I stand on this day. Blackout was the best iteration of Call of Duty's Battle Royale to date.
A lot of things that I think it did good as well. I think the biggest thing that stopped Blackout was it came out during Prime Fortnite. And
it also wasn't free. You had to pay for it.
It was not free to play. Call of Duty followed the formula to a T with Blackout. You drop in with nothing, loot guns, get attachments, and win the game. Blackout did introduce three things that was their twist on Battle Royale. One, you could get attachments for your guns. Unlike Fortnite, Call of Duty's always been known to introduce new attachments and a way to progress with those.
And I always appreciated picking up a base gun and then finding foregrips, sights, attachments along the way to make that gun better, instead of just finding like a blue gun, you know what I mean, that has certain attachments on it. Now let me find out the attachments. Let me find the attachments that I want and that I like.
They've always found ways for you to customize each and every one of your guns to make it feel personal to you. So what they did was add attachments throughout the map that you could pick up and put on your gun. This encouraged players to search through boxes and look for ways to make their gun better. And along those lines, they added things like little perks. These were abilities that let you heal faster, move silently, or even improve your audio.
And it's sad, the only way, if you really wanted to play Blackout nowadays, the best way to do it is not to buy Blackout 4 and play it. It's just to go play Call of Duty Mobile and just download the Blackout map, because you'll be able to play it that way.
Again, as we know it now, this is kind of like their loadout system. The final twist, and I'm not too sure if you can call this a twist, but it was their ability to introduce their Call of Duty engine. Whether or not you enjoy the franchise or not, you cannot deny one thing: nothing feels like Call of Duty. Many games have tried, but for whatever reason, Call of Duty has always had a certain feel to it. I don't know if it's their movement, their gameplay mechanics, but whatever it is, it made this game feel special. So Blackout brought these things into Battle Royale, and people loved it, but it was too late. Blackout was behind the curve. At this point, the people...
Nah, it really wasn't, because there was so many intricate levels. Like if you had level 2 armor, you could swim across the water fine, but if you had level 3 armor, it weighed you down because it had an extra headpiece so that you couldn't get one-shotted from a sniper. But if you tried swimming across the water, it would have you sink. There were so many little intricacies within the game, little Easter eggs. If you went to the graveyard, you could shoot certain graves to spawn like a wave of zombies so that you could get the ray gun. There were so many little intricate things within Blackout. It was not behind. It was ahead of its time. Just underappreciated because it had a high buried entry, which was like a $60 price tag or a $50 price tag at that time.
PC player base, which is one of the largest player bases for BRs, had already moved on. And there was another problem. Fortnite was free. You didn't have to pay any money to play it. Epic Games made their money from people who decided to buy cosmetics in-game. This was a newer concept at the time, and Call of Duty was not ready for this. So in order to play Blackout, you had to buy Black Ops 4. And not to mention that there was no crossplay at the time.
And honestly, I think I like Off the Grid because it reminds me the most of Blackout.
Meaning if you had friends on Xbox and you had a PlayStation, you guys couldn't play together. Now don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean Blackout wasn't a success. Even with all the restrictions, there was a core player base that was thriving. So Call of Duty looked at what was working and ran with it. Players loved the movement system, loved the ability to customize their gun however they wanted, and lastly, how the map felt. But there was still one thing that was hurting it: the one life rule. Having only one life is a core mechanic to BR, but there was a problem when you play it as a team. You see, originally, Battle Royales were always meant to be a single player game, but as Fortnite and Blackout progressed, quads and trios were introduced. meaning that you can now spawn in with all of your friends. But if one of them gets eliminated early, that's it. They either had to sit and watch as you guys play the game without them, or, which would happen most of the time, they would just leave the game and re-enter another one in hopes to play with their friends. Nobody wanted to make their buddies sit and watch somebody else play for 20 minutes. So if one of them died, they'd just back out. Then Call of Duty came up with a solution to this. In the fall of 2019, Call of Duty released their new title, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, with the promise of a new refreshed game mode named Call of Duty Warzone. Warzone was not launched with Modern Warfare 2019, but was promised to come a little bit later. We were told that this time around, they had dedicated a whole studio to building Warzone. As months went by, people waiting for Warzone's release, we slowly got intel and leaks of what was coming.
Man,
There would
that
be
time
this
was
new
so
thing
hype.
called loadouts, where instead of having to find guns on the ground, you could build your own loadout and get it at a store. Now, in order to buy your loadout, they introduced a currency system, where you would loot money from the ground or from players that you killed.
We've added an economy system where you can collect cash, go to a kiosk, and buy new equipment. You can upgrade yourself
good
through
old
buying
days.
armor, a gas mask, kill streaks, and there's even an opportunity to buy your squad mates back if they've been eliminated from the match.
This all sounded incredibly promising to the fans. A lot of the things that people loved from Blackout were being brought back, even amplified, and the ability to bring back your friends. Anticipation continued to build into the launch of Warzone, March 10th, 2020. And they struck gold.
Crazy edit. Man, the first
game
Warzone
was
was
a
legendary.
massive success, and it seemed like the new
Truly.
mechanics that Call of Duty introduced paid off. The money system was a hit. It rewarded players for moving around the map, looting up, and it never really felt like you were out of the game. As long as one teammate was up, you could always find a way to get back into the fight. All of the things that Call of Duty
Oh,
learned
good
during
times,
Blackout
good
and any
times.
other BRs, they implemented and found their niche. And for the most part, players loved it. Warzone became near and dear to a lot of
Oh,
people's
look at
hearts,
Baby
including
Repulse.
myself. And I'm gonna get into a few reasons of why I feel that way, but one thing I don't
Good
want to
old
leave out
Superstore.
is that COVID did play a huge role in Warzone's success. In almost every country around the world, there was a nationwide playing more video games in general, but Call of Duty Warzone specifically. Gaming and Call of Duty became a central hub for you to get your mind
young
off of
Nate
where
shot.
you were at during that time. You weren't allowed to go outside, so the way you built connections and felt human-to-human interaction was through video games. Because the maps were so
That
big,
was true.
there was a lot of downtime where you could sit and talk to your friends and just catch up. And because of this, a lot of people tended to gravitate towards Warzone as opposed to the OG multiplayer experience. So the timing of Warzone launch
It was also like that experience ran its course. I know multiplayer still has a large following, but I feel like battle royales have a more of just a following in general now. Just because that game mode is more engaging, creates more stories. When the traditional 6v6 can get a little repetitive.
from a gaming perspective was damn
That's my
near
opinion.
perfect. But there's a few things that I think Warzone did really well, and a couple things that I think have led to where Warzone is at now. The loadout system was fantastic. It was a really cool way for you to have your own unique gun and customize it however you wanted. It added variety to the game and let you have a gun that was personalized. But something that they added to Warzone
The
was
world would
this
be so
blueprint
sad.
system. In Blackout, if you remember, you would have to find a gun and then find attachments.
I loved
But what Warzone decided to do was remove the ability to find attachments, and instead you would find blueprints on the ground. Blueprints are guns that come with pre-built attachments. Sometimes you would also just get the gun
I
itself.
feel like they did that just for the sake of money, but they still could. They still could sell different kind of skins and cosmetics, and then you could equip like. I feel like they just made blueprints on the ground so that you could pick up a blueprint, like it, and then go buy it in the item shop. But you could have done the same thing with the attachments. Look at
But
COD Mobile.
What they started to do with these blueprints was sell them in the store. And if you own the blueprint, you get all the attachments that come with it and whatever cosmetics are attached to it as well. This became a massive money-making machine for Activision. And while I don't think this was a really big problem for Warzone 1 specifically, I do think that this led to a lot of problems down the road. Now, the loadout system is fun and the blueprint system is fine. But the problem was that the meta in-game shifted from grabbing a gun and getting to as many gunfights as possible.
Shit, from what we learned about Drew Vrothy, this is exactly the kind of market manipulation that he was talking about in his video. He was using like light bulbs and dishwashers. Should have been using Call of Duty as the example.
To now getting money and trying to get your loadout as fast as possible. Because otherwise, if you didn't, you wouldn't stand a chance against someone who had theirs. Instead of players being resourceful and trying to figure out a way to get usable weapons, what ended up happening was the better players were ended up landing in contested areas, get their money, get their loadout, and then fly at everybody.
Yep.
And if you didn't have your loadout, you'd lose every single time. The priority was always loadout first. Don't get me wrong, this still felt like a good
Damn,
battle royale
getting
experience,
fucked.
but there definitely was a shift in player focus from getting into gunfights as opposed to now just getting money. Because not only did money give you loadouts, it also gave you kill streaks. In multiplayer, a kill streak gave you a certain ability that helped you out during multiplayer. This was given to you by achieving a certain amount of kills. Well, in Warzone, if you got a certain amount of money, you could then buy a kill streak. In Warzone 1, they were pretty simple. You could buy a UAV that pinged enemies on the map, or a precision airstrike that would launch an airstrike on enemies. But again, what this meant was whoever had the most money had the bigger advantage. Even with all that being said, Warzone 1...
I don't mind the new kill streaks, and in fact, I wish you could almost buy more different ones. I wish you could buy almost all of them, like a turret, dogs, all of them. Like, allow that to be an option. That's just... I want chaos.
Did feel great, but Warzone 1 was still littered with bugs and glitches. Every week, there was a new bug or glitch that kind of broke the game. Sometimes it was a texture glitch where your gun transformed into like Optimus Prime and you couldn't even see what you were shooting. Other times you would get player models that wouldn't fully load into the game, so players were invisible. I know a lot of us tend to think about Warzone 1 with rose-tinted glasses and think it was perfect.
It was not.
But the game truly did have so many problems in its lifestyle. But even with all of those bugs, a lot of players let it slide because the game itself was actually really, really fun.
Yeah, because it was the first time that we experienced something like that. So for all the hiccups, it was fine then. It was cool. But now that they've been at this for 6 years and we're still getting the same bugs, and if not worse bugs, and things are getting worse, you've lost the faith of the community that you built.
Things were constantly being changed where new guns were introduced into the game or even new POI updates.
You think PUBG is next up?
The
You
map
think they're gonna
was really fun to play. Like I mentioned in Battle Royales, you play one map and it doesn't rotate like multiplayer. Some people did have their opinions that they didn't like it, but I personally loved it. I think the best way to describe Warzone 1 was that it felt fresh. It was the perfect combination of the right timing with the right game mode. Warzone 1 continued to succeed throughout Modern Warfare 2019, Call of Duty Cold War, and even Call of Duty Vanguard. Throughout those first 2 years, Verdansk was changed from Verdansk to Verdansk 84. And then we had our first...
And honestly, that was kind of the shift of like, okay guys, you're just changing up some of the map. Like, we need a big update because it was being compared to like Fortnite that was completely changing up their maps.
First new map, Warzone Caldera. Now, I'm not too sure how you feel about Caldera, but it is honestly, in my opinion, the worst map ever created in Warzone history. I felt like the map flow was really bad, and in essence, it was just one big volcano in the middle of the map. So what ended up happening was everybody would land on the center of the map and then fly anywhere they wanted to. You land peak, get to the high point, then rotate wherever you wanted after that. Now, in essence, that's cool and all, but that really made it to where you could only play in one style. It was the same game flow over and over again, which is not what we really saw in Verdansk. Remember, one of the best parts about a battle royale is that there is a new story every single game. So it was a little bit hard to play Caldera when you would land peak every single time and then rotate out the same way.
And if
Not to
all
mention
the
that there was
streamers are doing
absolutely
it
no
too,
cover
like,
around that map, and every single building was made out of tissue
PUBG
paper
never
that you
coming
could shoot
back?
through. As opposed to
like
Verdansk, where you could drop literally
feel like
anywhere.
Valorant also hit
You could
its
drop
course, or ran its
Superstore,
course.
you could drop
I don't think
Boneyard,
Valorant's
you could
gonna
drop Hospital. Every game felt
really
different.
grow
You could say
anymore
the
than
same
it
for
has,
Caldera,
which
but at
has
the
a
end of
good
the
following.
day, every single end game would end you looking up towards a mountain. So you kind of were forced to land at peak. Moving on, something else that I forgot to mention was not only the ability to buy back your teammates, but also the gulag. If you died, you got sent to a gulag, which was a 1v1 situation, where you fought the enemy head-to-head, and whoever won was able to redeploy back into the game. This was a pretty cool mechanic that it introduced. Not to mention that for solos, this was great, because nobody can buy you back in solos. So it gave you a second chance at winning the game. But it definitely did reduce the effectiveness of having the one life situation. Your life mattered just a little bit less with the gulag.
That's fair.
Don't get me wrong, I love the gulag, but too much of anything can be a bad thing. We'll get into that in a bit. Now, whether or not you liked Caldera or not, Call of Duty began running into an issue. Vanguard and Caldera didn't really add more to the table. They did introduce a couple new movement systems. One of them was airplanes. You could now hop into an airplane and quickly go across the map. But they also introduced something completely new that was redeploy balloons. You now have the ability to drop a balloon
What
and shoot
happened to the
yourself
airplanes?
literally across the map. The planes were not really well received, but a lot of players did really love the balloons. While Caldera was receiving lukewarm reception, there was another problem loom on the horizon, and this one was self-inflicted. Call of Duty had launched a new game mode called
don't bring it back.
Resurgence, and this game mode was on the map Rebirth Island. And if you're not familiar with
Which
what
is
Rebirth
back in
Island is
Blackout.
or what Resurgence is, it's pretty much Battle Royale but in a smaller map. The only difference here is that they gave you the ability to respawn now. And there was no set amount of times that you were allowed to respawn. As long as you had one player up, you could respawn. If you died, it started a respawn timer that once that number hit to 0, you were then redeployed back into the fight. What this did was combine the multiplayer experience with the BR experience. And because Rebirth Island was actually really fun, Battle Royale lost a lot of its player base.
Well,
it was during this time that the
was fun.
cracks began to form for Warzone. Warzone was at a standstill. Caldera wasn't bringing in new players that they had originally hoped for, and it didn't really feel like there was enough there for the casual player base. The bugs and the glitches continued, but
What's frustrating too is like if the devs or leadership at these studios could just get off the high horses and just listen to the community and listen to the streamers, I feel like this issue would never have persisted.
there was a bigger threat on the horizon. It's something I've mentioned in my past videos, but if you haven't seen any of them, cheaters in Warzone 1 became absolutely unbearable. Call of Duty introduced their anti-cheat system called Ricochet.
Does it work?
And in theory, Ricochet was supposed to catch and ban cheaters instantly.
Yeah,
The
it
problem
did not
was
work.
here that it was quickly found out that Ricochet sadly didn't even work. Even on the day that Ricochet launched, players were getting hacked on across the map, and it was genuinely a horrible experience. Initially, the problem was tolerable, but
Oh, the
as the
stoner.
game went on, it started to become something that literally could not be ignored. After 2 years, the player base was tired and fed up of people ruining the game that they loved. So at
PUBG
the end
died
of the
of cheaters
Caldera
too?
life cycle, people were hoping that there was going to be something that came out.
Cheating
that
in a video
refreshed
game
their
is
love for
just
the game.
the way to kill its
Following
community.
year, Modern Warfare 2 came out, and with
Because like when you're playing online, like you're playing in the idea that everyone's on an equal playing field, and if someone's having hacks or wall hacks or cheating on it, it like erodes the foundation of the community, of the trust of that game or the trust of that feeling, then it's only a matter of time before that game is dead.
it came Warzone 2.
Ugh,
Warzone 2 introduced
this was
a
so
new
bad.
bitmap and was supposed to be a return
This is a great example of what I was talking about: devs and leadership getting off their high horse and not just sniffing their own farts, but listening to what the community and streamers want. This would never have happened.
for Call of Duty. Let me break the news to you. This was not a good year for Call of Duty.
So guys, as I'm recording this, Warzone 2 is trending on Twitter. The longer this game is being around, the more controversial it seems like it gets, right? More and more people are complaining about it, more and more people are upset
I love this guy's accent.
about it.
Warzone, give a little bit of feedback. Obviously, it's not
I've seen
necessarily
it.
the game I expected.
Call
based
of Duty
off
had
what
the
we
same
in
shit.
Warzone, but I'm gonna give my pros and cons kind of.
Literally
where-
the same
I mean,
shit.
I do like the game. There's a lot of shit that needs polished. Like, it's a pretty bad game right now.
55 reasons why Modern Warfare 2 is the worst COD game ever made.
If you played
Oh
Modern
my
Warfare 2 at
God.
all, you know why. But essentially,
I mean,
they
he's not
changed
wrong.
Warzone completely.
It made
I'm
it so
talking
clunky.
everything. The way the game felt, every mechanic
So
was
bad.
completely different. Like I mentioned
They
before,
felt like they had to go and reinvent the wheel, and they really didn't. They just needed to go in there and polish and be like creative with changing the flow of the maps and the dynamics of the gun, not the gameplay itself.
one of the things that players have always loved about Call of Duty was its mechanics and gameplay. Well, Warzone 2 took a massive step backwards. The movement was worse than it's ever been, feeling slower than the original Call of Duty 4. And don't even get me started on the guns. They introduced visual recoil, weapon sway, and weapon bob with so many different penalties. So what ended up happening here was it didn't even matter what camos or blueprints you had, the game, the core itself felt horrible. This paired poorly with
Like,
some new
look, the
mechanics,
gameplay
specifically
of
to
this now
Warzone,
is
that
just
I
running.
think
There's no
still to this
sliding,
day have
there's
led
no
to so many
movement.
different problems. One of them being the
No
flare
sauce.
system. So not only do you have the gulag and the buyback system, but you also have a flare. This can be found on the ground, and it gives you the ability to bring back your teammate with just
This is
the
true.
click of a
Get
button.
it out of there.
As you'll see, this continued to shift Warzone into no longer a battle royale and more so resurgence. Players were given so many chances to come back again and win the game, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but battle royale no longer started to feel like battle royale. This was also the year where a big discussion started to form about skill-based matchmaking. Skill-based matchmaking, in essence, puts you in a lobby of people of your similar skill set. In theory, there's nothing wrong with it, and SBMM has been in multiplayer games before. But what Call of Duty was slowly starting to find out was that the higher the SBMM was, which made it harder for higher skilled players.
I can't. I see it. I gotta point it out. The skill level is misspelled.
The more player engagement and fun the lesser skilled players had.
I know he's probably seeing this like as the video's being pointed out, and I'm sure it's being pointed out in the comments, but like, yikes.
These casual players make up the bulk of Call of Duty's player base, and in essence, the bulk of their profits. And if you wanted to have any sort of fun in these lobbies, well, you had to use the absolute meta attachments and meta guns, because if not, you were getting smoked. Warzone 2 was a rough year for everybody, but Call of Duty quickly followed it up with Modern Warfare 3. A lot of people joked that Modern Warfare 3 was a patch for Modern Warfare 2, because it reverted a lot of the core changes that Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 introduced.
And it still felt like it just felt like Modern Warfare 2, but more polished. And I'm really fearful that we're gonna get the same thing this upcoming year with Call of Duty.
But I think this was the right
Black Ops 6 doesn't feel that good right now. It still feels a little clunky.
call, and I think it was the step in the right direction that the game needed. Players were beyond upset at the way Warzone 2 played out, and so going back and improving those mechanics, in my opinion, was a good thing. With the new Modern Warfare 3, Warzone introduced its new map, Urzikstan. And the perception for this map was not that great. Let's backtrack to Warzone 2. That had the map Al-Mazrah, which a lot of people loved the map, but the core of the game was so horrible. From 2v2 gulags, not being able to run while plating, visual recoil, that whole entire game was a mess. But Al-Mazrah, the map itself, was honestly amazing. Then, fast forward to Modern Warfare 3, they fixed a lot of the things that Warzone 2 introduced. The game finally started to feel like Call of Duty again. But they had this map, Urzikstan, that felt like it was just a cluster of different things put together. The colors fell flat, and it felt like it lacked an identity. Every single different POI in the map looked exactly the same and didn't have a different feel. As opposed to something like Verdansk, where Superstore felt drastically different than something like Quarry. But going back, Warzone 3 was genuinely in a really good spot. It might have had not the greatest map, but a lot of the core mechanics that were introduced in Warzone 2 were no longer there. They sped up all the animations, they made you feel like Call of Duty again. This was no longer hyper-realism like Warzone 2, and it actually felt like an arcade game. But there was still one thing that made Modern Warfare 3 feel not the greatest for specifically BR players. Not only did they keep things like flares, gulags, and being able to buy back your teammates, but they made being able to buy back your teammates cheaper, and then they added things like redeploy packs that let you automatically respawn when you die. And then the icing on the cake is even if you died and you went to the gulag, they added things like gulag tokens on the floor that gave you another gulag token. So there was now flares, gulags, gulag tokens, redeploy packs, and then finally being able to be bought back by your teammate. 5 different ways to come back in Battle Royale.
I don't see that as
You can probably see where I'm going with this. The whole Battle Royale feel went away completely. And in my opinion, I think this change was drastically due to more players playing Resurgence.
Yeah, I disagree.
So in Call of Duty's head, they thought, we have to make Battle Royale like Resurgence. Then there's no identity for both. In my opinion, Resurgence should feel like Resurgence. It should feel like a sandbox that you can come back instantly, and it's honestly catered to a lot of the casual player base. But at the same time, do not diminish Battle Royale. Battle Royale should feel like Battle Royale. There should be high stakes.
I feel like all the real issue to this is the creativity and the passion behind the game felt like it died out, and there was nothing really trying to innovate the game in a productive way that the community or the streamers or that was being outspoken. That's what I think was the biggest issue. I don't think it was being 5 different ways to be brought back into a game.
It should be hard to win a game of Battle Royale. Those high adrenaline moments in the end game are something that I desperately and drastically miss. I don't get that same feeling in Resurgence. And even now, I still don't get that same feeling in Battle Royale. Gone are the days of strategic planning and careful rotations to get yourself into the end game. That feeling of valuing your life slowly faded away. Why would I care if I die in the beginning game when I know I'm going to get brought back no matter what? There was a reason why people loved Battle Royale as opposed to multiplayer. And I understand that Resurgence is somewhere in the middle, and that fan base still deserves its love too. But don't diminish Battle Royale as a whole. Multiplayer needs to have its identity. Resurgence needs to have its identity, and Battle Royale needs to have its identity.
I feel like in these videos we get lost in the sauce on like on the actual word of like battle royale.
Comes Black Ops 6. And as a lot of us thought, we all thought Treyarch does not miss. Call of Duty Black Ops 4, even though it came out during Fortnite, was still really, really good. Black Ops 3 is one of my favorite games ever. When Black Ops 6 launched with multiplayer, honestly, it was one of the most fun multiplayers I've played in a long time. And in my head, I was like, oh yeah, when this comes to Warzone, this is going to feel amazing. The Black Ops 6 Warzone integration was a disaster. Black Ops 6 was supposed to introduce the new Omni movement system, which honestly felt really, really good in multiplayer, but for whatever reason, felt horrible
it did not
in Warzone.
translate.
There was also no new big map. We got Urzikstan again. The Resurgence players were rewarded with Area 99, but us BR players were stuck on Urzikstan again. And like always, the game felt bland. I genuinely do hope that one day we can have a map rotation. I could just think of a day where we have Verdansk rotating with Al Mazrah. And we've seen other games do this like Apex. So why not Warzone as well?
Or even COD Mobile. See what I mean when I think COD Mobile is like the best version of Call of Duty that's out right now? It's insane.
I think there's a couple really big issues right now with Black Ops 6 Warzone, but the biggest thing right now, in my opinion, is the hackers. I'm telling you right now, it is so bad to the point where I genuinely cannot play. I've had a hacker counter in my stream, and one day we had as high as 30 hackers in 6 hours. And not to mention that these are blatant hackers. Not wallers, not soft aim, I'm talking about blatant auto aim lock. At this stage, Ricochet has been around for 4 years. So how are we still dealing with issues that we had in Warzone 1? And
this is what I was talking about with eroding the faith of the community.
Don't remember Warzone 1, the hacker situation was insane. So it really doesn't matter what guns are in the game, what new things they introduce, if every time we load up, we are going to get hacked on. You literally can't play the game. Then finally, right now, this Warzone integration has been the worst it's ever been.
Really good. But within the space of 10 hours, you...
Holy schmoly, did you see how fast he got obliterated by the guy on his right while he was shooting at the guy up top?
really notice all of the stuff that's gone missing. And if my testing's anything to go
And the guy up top killed him.
by,
What?
it means a number of QO out.
What is the desync on that? Oh
Yeah, like, are we looking at desync? Because that's not like cheating. That just
my god, it didn't look like that at all on his screen. And the guy on the side didn't even shoot him on his screen.
Just
What
haven't
the
made the
hell?
cut.
Things like default perks have been taken away from us, and
I must have
somehow,
missed
some way,
the context of
Warzone
that.
always takes 1 step forward, 5 steps backwards. I genuinely believe that the core mechanics, the core
have to watch that
baseline
back.
of this game is actually not bad. And Black Ops 6's multiplayer is a testament to that. I thoroughly enjoyed Black Ops 6 multiplayer. But whenever that was introduced into Warzone, somewhere along the lines, there was so many bugs that integrated with it. From guns disappearing to not even being able to get your loadout, there is genuinely
Where?
so many things wrong with the game right now.
that's so
And it's just
frustrating.
crazy to me how we can still be in this state 2 to 3 months
that's
after
so
launch.
frustrating.
So as of today, here is where we stand. Warzone 1 started simple with the promise of something bigger. Year after year, more features were introduced. But the
More bugs were introduced.
big issues plaguing the game have never really been addressed. Server stability and dev errors are still a thing 4 years later. Cheaters, in my opinion, are worse than they were in Verdansk. Skill-based matchmaking continues to be cranked further and further. Guns have absolutely no recoil, giving anybody the ability to shoot as straight as scump. Let's not even begin to get into the discussion of aim assist, because as a controller player, aim assist is broken. But sadly, Call of Duty only cares about the casuals. And let's be honest, if I told my dad to play this game, he is not getting a kill. But with SBMM and incredible aim assist, there is a chance. I've said this before and I'll say it again, Call of Duty Warzone needs to be its own separate entity. As we've seen in some of the blogs,
I agree
Call of
with
Duty
that.
and Activision want to make multiplayer 1-to-1 to Warzone. And in my opinion, that is the one thing that is ruining this game. Back in Modern Warfare 3, mantling speeds were incredibly fast. And because of that, in Warzone, they were fast as well. But when Black Ops 6 was introduced, mantling speeds were incredibly slow. And because multiplayer always integrates into Warzone, Warzone had to change as well. Which means that the mantling speed in Warzone this year is drastically slower than last year.
I have to
problem
say, I
here
do
is-
like the COD movement. Like, this is where at the end of the day, it's like I hate it because I do love COD. Halo and Call of Duty are like the games that I grew up playing, truly.
That every single year there is a new developer that works on the core game. For example, Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer, and Treyarch. Each one of those studios has their definition of what the best game is in their eyes. But what they don't realize
I
is
just
that
don't
the
understand
Warzone
how like different you have Treyarch, you have Infinity Ward, you have Sledgehammer, you have Raven Software. Like none of these studios communicate and work with each other. And I think that is the most boneheaded logic I can imagine. Why are they not communicating and working with each other? That way they're building off of this off of the same logic instead of every year feeling like it's Frankenstein patchwork to come in and make this thing come to life.
side of things is suffering. Because what happens if Sledgehammer believes that we should have really fast, good movement, and then Infinity Ward comes in and penalizes you and they want realistic, slow movement? As you can see, this is a big, big problem. Because Warzone simply lacks an identity. Every year it changes and it has to adjust to the main core game. A big reason why I think Warzone 1 for those 2 years was actually really, really good is because it didn't shift its core. Warzone 2019 was in Modern Warfare's engine. And when Cold War came out, they kept that Modern Warfare 2019 engine. They integrated all the guns, and yes, the guns did feel slightly different than Modern Warfare guns, but the core of the game stayed the same. But think about what happened when we shifted from Caldera to Warzone 2. The game took 30 steps backwards. So in essence, I want to ask you guys, what do you guys think is Warzone's main problem? There are games that have survived generations of players, like World of Warcraft, GTA, Minecraft, and even Fortnite. But the majority of these games don't really have the legs to keep doing this. Is Warzone one of those games that if it keeps going down this route, it will devour itself? In essence, the big crunch.
This is the same issue with PUBG, with Krafton and Tencent. They're more focused on getting like towards skins and events than game optimization. And I get that companies got to pay their bills, and I'm okay with companies focusing on skins and events. But you got to make sure the game is optimized and the community is happy. If you do that, ooh, they will reward you. What are you doing watching these types of videos? This is my cup of tea. Oh man, it was a good vid. It was a good VOD. It was a good VOD. That's what I was saying. Like at the beginning of this, is like I started streaming because of gaming and like learning about esports and just this whole culture. So I want to incorporate it back more into